One of these times I'm going to say something and somebody out there will just say, well, actually.
Right, exactly.
It's very possible I've said something dumb already. Welcome to My Hill to Die On, Episode 9.
Everyone has things they are passionate about.
Things we want our friends to try and experience.
So we've convinced each other to try different things.
And we talk about these experiences to see if we can get just one more person
to join us on our hill to die on.
As it is growing to the end of the year, not the school year. Not quite yet for that.
No, halfway through that. Almost.
But yes, as it is growing to the end of the year, we thought it'd be appropriate to discuss some of our favorite things from 2019. Frankly, we could use some things to celebrate and rejoice about in 2019.
There were some good things, so I think we can talk about them.
Oh, we have some good things, but...
Since we like to talk about our favorites anyway.
Yeah. I will talk about my favorite game of the year, my number one game of 2019, I guess you could say. The difficulty for me that I will preface this with is I tend not to play a lot of games the year they come out. The games that I actually played this year when they came out were most of the ones that I've talked about already in previous podcasts. The Outer Worlds, Code Vein, AI, those were pretty much the ones that came out this year that I definitely played. But there are two more that I haven't mentioned because they came out earlier in the year. And the two other ones that are really up there for me were Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers. This is an expansion to the Final Fantasy XIV game. So Final Fantasy XIV, for those who don't know, is Final Fantasy's MMORPG, so the massively multiplayer ones. If you've played World of Warcraft or anything like that, think something similar to that. The big difference that I find with the Final Fantasy XIV game is the fact that it actually has a very well done narrative. A very epic storyline that you are the hero of this entire tale going out and saving, and so all the cutscenes that are happening have you in them and various things. Shadowbringers was the most recent expansion, and we're talking cinematic cutscenes, well-developed story, interesting characters, spots that I actually out loud was sitting at home just watching these cutscenes and laughing at. So, just a very well done story, very well done altogether. I just generally really liked that game. It is an MMORPG, and that expansion is the third major expansion, technically, because there's a lot of mini expansions that happen in between. The reason why I have to talk about this with some hesitance is the fact that Shadowbringers, being the third expansion, means that you have to play all the previous parts of the story to get up to it. You're looking at probably a easy 150-hour investment.
Mm-hmm.
It is a good story all throughout. There are a couple of parts that drag a little bit, usually when you're doing a lot of fetch quests, but the gameplay is amazing. I really enjoy playing it. My problem is I just don't have a whole lot of time to play a lot of MMOs these days. And so I've caught myself on both of the past expansions, getting the new expansion, playing for a couple of months, especially during the summers, and then falling off, and then coming back during summers. I just don't have the time to invest into a game like that these days. Honestly, that's probably going to be my number one of the year that came out this year. Another one that I really like that came out this year actually came out in January of this year, but it did not receive as much acclaim as I think some people were very against it. It was very divisive, basically, is what I'm saying. And that one was Kingdom Hearts 3.
Oh, okay. Wait, I remember that.
And Kingdom Hearts 3 it's a good game, but again, this is Kingdom Hearts 3. And while that's number 3, it's actually game number 9, if I'm doing my math right. 9, or is it 12? because there were a lot of like sub games in the middle. Anyway, they have released collections of all these games re-released and repackaged on PlayStation 4, so people can go ahead and play them. And I really liked it, but some people felt like the combat system was meh, and a lot of the people who panned the storyline hadn't played the other 9 games, and so they weren't as invested. That being said, if you had played the 9 games, you were pretty invested, and so you were already in on the storyline, so, I mean, it's very hard to be unbiased on that game. So for me, like, I have played all of these games. I enjoyed these games. Yes, some of the previous games had some weird mechanics and some weird choices, and they have one of those convoluted stories that you need to do a beautiful mind type chart on the wall just to figure it all out. But it is a good game. And so I generally really liked it, but there were some people who I have talked to about this game, at least. And I don't know about the general populace's feelings on this. Just the people who I have talked to about it. And, like, a lot of the people near me are basically, there are some people who loved it and some people who didn't. And I definitely fell into the field of loving it. Between Shadowbringers, Kingdom Hearts 3, and all of the other games that I've mentioned in previous podcasts, I would probably say Shadowbringers would be my number 1 of the year, simply because of how much it brought me into the story and how much time I invested into that thing. For a pure story-based thing, I really loved AI as well, but again, that one was a shorter game, so I don't know if I can fully say that one would be my game of the year. Especially because since it is a very narrative-driven story, it is you play it once and then you know the story, you know how to go about it, and so it is very hard to go back to a game like that. So I would say of my year, 14 was definitely up there, AI was definitely up there, and my other of my top 3 would be The Outer Worlds.
Okay.
That one was just simple fun for me.
Alrighty. I haven't played as many games.
Oh, I didn't even talk about the games that I've played in 2019 that didn't come out in 2019.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I only played games that haven't come out in 2019. I haven't played any games that came out in 2019. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's quite all right.
The game that I've played the most this year, because I play very few games, and I only play really on my phone, is something called Whirlyword. I did the paid version with the black logo, but there's a free version too. Whirlyword is the one that I played the most this year, and I like it because this is the kind of puzzle I like, and it is something that doesn't take up too much of my time, and I can put it down when I need to. I like games that I can pick up and put down whenever, as opposed to being held into a 2-minute or a 4-minute level.
Or a 4-hour.
Or a 4-hour level, yes. Mm-hmm. So I do like this one. It is just a simple game. Nothing frilly about it whatsoever. The other game that I've played a little bit in 2019 is Cooking Fever. And the only reason I've been playing it is because my daughters have been playing it. So I started playing it because they were playing it and I wanted to make sure it was okay. And it has a few ads in it, but it's not too bad. It is an app where they, of course, want you to buy more stuff in their store or buy credits or something. And the other thing I don't like about it is it does hold you to a 4-minute level. So I don't really want to be held to a 4-minute level. I want to be able to choose when I'm playing and when I'm not playing. But I've played that a little bit, and I surpassed my daughters for a little while. I had gotten further than them, but now they have surpassed me again because I have stopped playing pretty much. So I do like that. And the other game that I just started playing again just because it's fun is Mini Metro. My daughter played it the other day, and I was like, oh, yeah, I remember how much fun this game is. And then I started playing it again, and yes, I do like it. But again, it is another... Have you played Mini Metro?
I don't think I have. Is this another phone game?
It's another phone game, yeah. I didn't really play my Switch much this year, so... Mini Metro is a great phone game. You're basically laying out subway systems in the towns they have you in.
Uh-huh.
And it's quite fun. I like it a lot. And I did play the daily challenge, and I like the daily challenge. I'm going to start doing that more often when I play this game. Instead of trying to beat the levels, play the daily challenge every once in a while. And I like it.
Yeah, it looks interesting. It actually looks very similar to a board game I've played, and I'm trying to remember what the name of the board game was. As I mentioned before, My difficulty is the fact that I play a lot of games that did not come out this year. The ones I listed earlier are just the ones that came out in 2019. Valkyria Chronicles 4 is a great game, very interesting battle system, but I really, really loved it. And that was probably one of my favorite games from this past year that I played. Ooh, that actually there might be a tie for that one. Because I'm now thinking about one other game that I played. And that would be Monster Hunter.
Okay.
Monster Hunter came out in 2018. Basically, it's a very simple game. You go out and you hunt monsters.
Okay.
And you basically take parts of those monsters and turn them into more powerful weapons to hunt bigger monsters. It's a very simple concept, but it's actually a lot of fun. It is just a simple, fun game. But the other one I was mentioning was there's the first Neo, and there is Phoenix Wright. Now, Phoenix Wright did come out this year, but the reason I didn't include it earlier was because it is a re-release of a bunch of games that came out in the, I want to say the early 2000s is when these games came out. Phoenix Wright is a game where you are an attorney.
Oh, I think you were telling me about that.
Yes, you investigate the cases and try to prove your client innocent of murder. Because it's always murder. And Phoenix Wright has some interesting legal styles. And by that, I mean many times he has tried to bluff his way through a court case. Mm-hmm. And he happens to stumble upon just the right piece of evidence that does not seem important to him until it's halfway through the case, and then he goes, "Oh, I have just the piece of evidence that supports my claim that I completely made up about 5 minutes ago." But it is honestly a very interesting game, a lot of kooky characters. It is basically a mix of a visual novel and a point-and-click adventure where you are an attorney trying to prove your client's innocence and let justice be done.
Sounds fun.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. It is definitely up there. I've played a lot more games than these ones that I've mentioned, but frankly, these are probably the ones that stuck out to me the most. I mean, there's a couple of really short experiences. I'll only mention one more because otherwise I'll make this line really long. Rhyme. Rhyme was really interesting. R-I-M-E. Rhyme. And that one was interesting because it is basically a adventure where you are walking through and solving and experiencing this world. And it is one of those very emotive games that tries to make you feel things. Not necessarily you will feel things. It's very interesting, and the message they're telling through the story is actually a very beautiful story. If you let the message get into your head, for some people it might actually start to make them a little choked up at the end. But I can't say any more about it because otherwise I will be giving away all of the spoilers and what the entire game is about. But the game opens with you controlling a young boy who basically just washes up on this shore of this beach. And why you're there, how you're there, what this is all about is explained through the game. And honestly, I mean, when I say it's a short game, if you sit straight through it and play the entire thing, it's maybe a 2 to 5 hour game.
Oh, okay.
But it's more based on the environment, the story, and what's going on around you than much else. But I think it was one of those games that it was similar to Journey, similar to those sort of feels where you're learning things about what's happening through the world around you more than anything else. Very interesting, kind of one of those give it a shot kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I would say those are probably the games that stuck out to me the most of games that I played this year. Again, I'm limiting myself, and I am also cutting out things that, for example, I started previous years and then came back to, and things like that.
These are all PS4 games, it looks like, right?
All of mine are available on PS4. I tend to play on my PlayStations a lot lately. The only computer I have right now is my Mac, and not really designed for heavy gaming. And I play a couple of phone games, but not too many. So pretty much everything that I play is at least available on PS4, but let's face it, most games these days tend to be available on multiple systems.
Mm.
I played a couple of Switch games in addition to what I've listed here, but most of those, again, came out in previous years. Because I've been catching up on Switch games rather than keeping up.
All right, let's move on to movies.
All right.
Movies that came out in 2019.
Movies that came out in 2019. All right.
I haven't been to the theater too much. So I've been to the theater, it looks like I've been 7 times in 2019. At least that's all the receipts I could find, and I think that's correct. So that's not too much, I hope. But it was interesting coming up with this list because I can see that everything is Disney related. It's either Marvel or Pixar or straight from Disney itself. So I've got Endgame, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, or the Marvel ones. And I've got Mary Poppins Returns and Lion King for the Disney ones, and Toy Story 4. Oh, and I guess Frozen 2 is not Pixar, but it's animated. And actually, I'm having a hard time coming up with my favorite one. I think I'm probably going to pick Mary Poppins Returns. Not a Marvel one.
Okay.
Marvel ones are pretty good, but I'm not sure they were my favorite. I think Mary Poppins Returns, not because it was a good movie, as much as maybe how much my kids enjoyed it as well. So just the joy around it makes it a good movie for me. I liked that my daughters, they wanted to watch, they on the way to the theater, they were like, oh, let's watch the first movie on the way to the theater. And I thought, oh, what a great idea, because they hadn't seen it in a while. They've watched it before, but they haven't seen it in a while. So they loaded up their phone with Mary Poppins and watched it in the car, the original one. And I think actually one of the nice things about that was it helped me remember too. And then when they were watching it, I was like, oh yeah, the joke about the man with a wooden leg named Smith. And I was thinking, oh, they gotta talk about this in the new movie, right? And he definitely brought it up, so I was very pleased. I had a fun experience where we went over the summer. We stayed at my parents' house for a while, and my grandmother lives there. And we showed her Mary Poppins Returns, and I was thinking, oh, this is risky, because she, of course, went to see Mary Poppins in the theater. And, of course, she's a big fan of Julie Andrews. So I was thinking, this is risky. Is she going to like this modern rehash of this movie, or is it going to ruin, is it just horrible for her? But she enjoyed it. So I think that was another feather in its cap for this movie, too. So I think it was fun. I mean, I do think it mirrored the original movie, but it mirrored the original movie in almost exactly the same ways, and in the ways that made the original movie good. I think it was one of the best remakes of a movie I've ever seen. I enjoyed it.
I'm glad to hear that. I also really liked it. I would say I'm in a very similar boat to you. A lot of the movies that get really famous over in America and overseas tend to either come to Japan very slowly or not at all. Mm-hmm. And we have to wait for it to come out on video.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Actually, interestingly, you're right. Mary Poppins Returns came out in 2018.
Oh.
I know we watched it launch day here in Japan.
Yeah. Everything comes out late here.
Yeah, it was 2019 in Japan. But in IMDb says it launched December of 2018.
Which is probably that it launched in 2018 December, and by the time it got over here, it was January. Because it was pretty early in the year, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think I watched it in January. February 1st, it says. Sorry. It launched February 1st.
Oh. So I also have been to the theater a couple of times throughout the year. Most of them have been for Marvel movies. And there's like 1 or 2 movies outside of Marvel and Disney. Because, I mean, pretty much mine are like, I went to Spider-Man, I went to Avengers, I went to Mary Poppins, I went very similar to your list. I mean, there are movies out there that came out this year that I really wish I could have seen, but I never saw them come to the theater over here. I would have loved to see Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, I want to see that movie too, yeah.
So, given the fact that I'm going to head to the States for Christmas to spend time with my folks, I will probably try to make a stop and see that movie if it's still in theaters. There's a couple other ones that I just look at and I go, yeah, I would have liked to see that, but I just didn't get around to it. To set it apart, though, there is one movie that I got a chance to see that I know you did not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that was Tenki no Ko, or Weathering with You.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's made by the same guy who made
Made Your Name?
Made Your Name, thank you. But really, really good story. The music was done by the same people who did Your Name as well, and it was, like, the soundtrack is just beautiful. I really enjoyed the movie. I would highly recommend it to anybody who has seen Your Name and likes that style. If you haven't seen Your Name and are even generally okay with anime-style art, I would say it's a great movie. The story is very well done, and go ahead and watch that. Like I said, it was very good. That being said, my pick of the year would either be... Actually, I would say it ties. Because I'm going to be a jerk and say I'm picking two.
Okay.
Because that's how I roll. My tie would be Avengers Endgame.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a very well done movie. I mean, yes, I had some problems with some of their timey-wimey stuff, but...
Yeah, I think that's what kept me from picking it, is just a little problems with timey-wimey. It was very entertaining.
Oh, yes.
Very entertaining, but I'm being persnickety.
Well, we've never been persnickety before. So I would say that those two, Tenki no Ko and Avengers Endgame, are probably tied for my first place of new movies of this year. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've seen a lot of movies this year, most of them on video or through Netflix or things like that. Although, I'm not going to have that next year.
You can't watch it through Netflix.
Can't watch it through Netflix anymore.
All right, movies we watched this year.
Oh, movies we watched this year. Oh, man. That's going to be harder.
Yeah, actually, I came up with a pretty good list for me.
Then you go first, because I have not decided yet. And by the time I finish my sentences, I will have to have decided.
Yep. So I record movies off of cable, stuff that I haven't seen or stuff that I want to keep. But movies that I've seen for the first time this year that I've enjoyed. These are not my picks, but these are other interesting ones for me. Spacewalker, which is a movie I recorded off of cable. It's a Russian movie. And it was funny. I think I was saying it to you, right? Or maybe I was saying it to one of our other coworkers, but I was saying it was very interesting to me to watch this movie in a foreign language. But then I realized, I watch Japanese movies occasionally. How come this movie felt more foreign to me? And I think it's because I'd understood none of the other words, right? With Japanese, I at least understand some things or can read some of the subtitles or something like that. But with this movie, I couldn't understand anything that was said that wasn't translated into English. So that was interesting to me. But Spacewalker was an interesting story, something I had not heard in the space race before. So it was quite fun to watch that. Another fun one that I liked was Atomic Blonde. Well, fun might be a tough word for that. It was a rough movie.
A movie you enjoyed.
Yes, that was very interesting and enjoyable, yes. There's a lot of killing in that movie. And another one that I liked that I hadn't seen, because I tried to record sci-fi stuff off of cable. Well, I at least tried to record the good stuff. But one that I recorded was The Time Traveler's Wife. And I really enjoyed the timey-wimey of that movie. That's for sure. Mm. I do feel that they got it to work, and I liked that about that movie. It was a decent story, and they got the time travel stuff to work well. So I liked that, and the premise of that was fun. But my pick of the year, I believe, needs to be Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Am I stealing that from you?
You are, but that's fine. That's fine.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I think it was out in iTunes the same time it was in theaters here in Japan. So my wife said, well, let's just buy the movie then, because we'll spend more money on theater tickets otherwise. So we bought the movie in iTunes instead of going to the theater. And I'm kind of glad we own it now, because it's just a fun movie. So I think that's my pick for the movie I watched in 2019. I think it came out earlier. I don't even know when it came out.
I think it came out 2018, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think it's true that it was in the theaters and we're like, it's in iTunes. We'll just buy it then. Oh, Spider-Man Spider-Verse was released in December in America, and it came in March to Japan. It's the last on the list of release dates. My goodness. And actually, one of the funny things was my wife thought it was a live-action movie, so she was quite shocked when it was not a live-action movie. But she enjoyed it still, which I'm very pleased about, so that was good.
Good. That made my choice even harder now.
I sniped it.
You sniped my choice. Because that was probably going to be my pick right there, was Spider-Man Enter the Spider-Verse. Because I just think back to my, like, what I've watched this year, and so much of it has been TV series. So yeah, movie-wise, I don't really have a whole lot. I was probably going to pick Spider-Verse, but is TV series okay?
Yeah, sure.
Well, we'll fudge this. Because I would say the favorite new TV series that I've watched, and by new, I mean new to me, because it is definitely not new, is Farscape.
Oh, okay.
Because I had not seen Farscape before, and at my friend's recommendation, I went ahead and decided to start watching it. And it is very hard to watch Farscape, because there is not really a good streaming service that has it.
Okay.
And so I ended up finding the collection of Blu-rays, actually, on Amazon for super cheap.
Okay.
And so I think it was a total of about $30 for the entire series for me.
Oh, wow.
And I have just really enjoyed it. I have not watched through the whole thing yet, but because it is 4 full seasons, and I think each episode is like an hour long, and so, you know, it takes some time. But it is a really good series. Basically, the best way I can describe it is a sci-fi show that many of the aliens are... There are 2 ways that the aliens are done in this show. It is either through Jim Henson Company Muppets.
Oh, okay.
Or through your normal, like, Star Trek makeup.
Uh-huh.
So half of your characters are Muppets, half of your characters are humans, and half of... And yes, I just made 3 halves.
The third half.
The third half is your normal, like, alien with some extra ears, or forehead ridges, or coloring, or...
Wait, this is Ben Browder and Claudia Black?
Yeah.
How does this line up with Stargate? They must have come to Stargate after the series ended.
This one was from 99 to 2001-ish. Am I remembering that right?
It says 2003.
Yeah, 99 to 2003.
Wow. So they must have came to Stargate. No, he came in 2005 to 2007.
Ah. And Farscape, they wrapped up their concluding movie in 2004.
I did not realize. I might have to borrow this from you.
It's a good series. I will gladly lend it to you. Probably not one to watch in front of your kids.
Okay.
Because there are some things, but, you know, sci-fi. Definitely PG.
I liked Ben Browder. He was pretty fun in Stargate.
Oh, yeah. And their characters are fantastic.
So, and are the Muppets in this show, are they done from the Jim Henson Company, or is it somebody else that does them?
I believe it is from Jim Henson Company. It is Brian Henson who was involved in this one, if I remember right.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yes, here it is. It was produced by the Jim Henson Company and Hallmark Entertainment.
Okay.
Definitely feels like a Hallmark show. And by that I mean not at all.
Okay.
It's a really, really good series. So even though it's not a movie, I highly recommend it. And I'm a little embarrassed that it took me this long to really watch it. Because, you know, this was, 99. So I was in the prime age to watch this. 11.
Okay, another TV show that I've seen now.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen 2 sci-fi shows that I've enjoyed this year.
Yeah.
I've seen The Orville. Have you watched any of those yet?
Not yet. I'm way far behind on that. Sorry.
No, and I've only seen like 5 of them. But they do seem to capture what is good about Star Trek into another show and just make it more humorous.
So the captain always gets his shirt off.
No. But they make fun of things like that, though. They definitely make fun of the tropes, which is great. And then the other show that I've watched that I think is probably my pick for a TV show probably would be For All Mankind.
Yeah. From what I've seen of that, because I'm not fully caught up on that, I've started it, but I'm not fully caught up. Yes, that one I would definitely fully agree.
Yeah, it's very good so far. There are some definitely like edge of your seat moments. In the last episode that I watched, I haven't seen the one that was released yesterday yet, but the last episode I watched was very edge of your seat. Whoa, what's going on? What's going to happen? And I enjoyed that.
When it comes to movies of this year that I saw this year, yeah, the more I think about it, definitely going to agree with you on that one. It has definitely got to be Into the Spider-Verse. A lot of my other movies that I watched this year, a lot of them I've seen before. Or were not really worth mentioning. Because they're just like, it was okay, but it wasn't great. But Enter the Spider-Verse was a standout great movie.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely why I had to go with TV series. But yes, I've watched a lot of TV series this year.
Let's talk about our favorite trips of the year.
Okay. I went on 2 trips this year. The first trip I went on was actually part of our retreat. Or not retreat, our...
A conference?
Yes, conference. That was down in Kobe. And really, that one was just a nice, relaxing trip for me. That was this past year, right?
End of March, beginning of April, something like that.
Yeah. Well, that trip was really nice, mostly because it was just a sightseeing trip for me. I got to climb a couple mountains. I went into a ryokan, one of those really nice, fancy hotels that have hot springs right in it. It was on Miyajima. So Miyajima is this little island to the south of that area that is just a beautiful island, and it has this floating torii gate. And so I rode on a boat tour that sailed right underneath the gate, and it was all lit up at night. And so it was just a wonderful, beautiful trip down there. There was a couple of castles that I went to around the area, but those ones were a little bit far away.
Oh, did you go Himeji? Was that it?
Yep, I went to Himeji. That was the one that I went to. The major one that I went to.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for reminding me, because I was struggling and trying to remember names because it's been so long. But yes, I went to Himeji. I actually have some really lovely pictures because it was right at the peak sakura season. Mm-hmm. And so I have a lot of really nice pictures of Himeji with the sakura all underneath it. And just, it was a wonderful day for it. And just beautiful, beautiful castle. Yes, it is pretty much fully a reproduction now.
Yeah, oh yeah. All castles in Japan are. I mean, they build them out of wood, so
yeah,
they burn down.
They burn down. I mean, there's a couple that like people can go, oh, this was the original beam, but everything else around that beam is fully new.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I had heard one of the shrines they built it at 80% scale because it was just too big to build it again at full size.
Well, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was just a wonderful trip altogether for that one. And then I will talk about my second trip after you talk about yours.
Okay, sure. We took a few trips this year, but I have 2 that I guess I want to talk about. One of them, we like to go to Izu, and we've gone to Izu a few times, and there is a nice hotel that we usually stay at, but over spring break, we decided we would try a different one just to try it, and it looked pretty good on Rakuten Travel, which is what I usually look at to find places within Japan. It has a good search engine for things within Japan. And we looked at it. The pictures are great. We got there. It was up on the mountain higher. Mm-hmm. So we thought, oh, that'll be nice. It'll have a nice view. And where we normally stay was up on the mountain. So we thought that would be fine. This place too. This place had such skinny roads up at the mountains that driving our, at that time, like brand spanking new car through those skinny roads was very scary. My wife was definitely on the edge of her seat in the passenger seat, like, oh, how close are you to the edge, you know? So that was, and then we get to the hotel, and the hotel, there must have one good room because that's where they took all the pictures, because the room we stayed in was horrible.
Oh.
It was not like the pictures at all.
I was waiting for that shoe to drop.
Because, yeah, well, at the end, we're like, well, what do we do? Like, it was not good. Like, we're like, we paid for it. Like, what's he going to do? I realized sometime that evening, like, oh, where we're staying in, the image is flipped. So it must be on the other side of the building that they were taking the pictures, and the other side of the building was all full. And going back on the site, it looked like you could pay more for certain rooms. And I'm like, I bet you all all the pictures were taken in the really nice rooms on the other side of the building, and they didn't take any pictures of the room we stayed in. So it's like, ay. My wife made a snide comment on the way out, but yeah, he's like, he shook his head and doesn't do anything, right? What's he can do? That was a bit disappointing. But we had fun in Izu because we like that area, and we had fun in Izu. But the hotel was disappointing.
What do you normally do there at Izu?
We go there are some restaurants that, now that we've been there a few times, there's some restaurants we like. There's a beach that we travel to. We didn't do the beach in March. That would have been cold. But there's a beach that we travel to when we go in the summer. Mm-hmm. There are some places in the area that we know and that we've been to a few times now. So we kind of like it. That's my anti-pick. And I won't tell you that hotel's name. But my real pick would be, we went to Karuizawa over... Goodness, I don't remember when it was. It was recently on a 3-day weekend, so maybe it was fall break. Must have been fall break. We went to Karuizawa, and we went to a new hotel called Hotel Karuizawa 1130, or 1130. And it is kind of up in the mountains in Karuizawa. It is not near like the major shopping areas. Mm-hmm. It might be closer to the skiing places. We didn't go to a skiing place, but it might be closer to there. But it's a nice place, and the reason that I was looking at it in the first place was because it had an indoor water park area for younger kids. So that was the big draw for us, and it's a small water park, and it's definitely for younger kids. So my oldest daughter, she had fun playing, but it was more for my younger daughter's ages. But it also has a lot of jet pools for adults, so that's kind of fun too. So it was a fun stay. We stayed there for a night. We enjoyed the water park. And it was just the right amount of time, probably. So we had a good time there.
That's good. So my other trip was fun, but I would say that probably my pick would definitely be the Kobe Miyajima Himeji trip.
Okay.
But my other one was a lot of fun as well, because I got to go up to Fukushima with some of our coworkers and a couple of other people from the local area. And it was sponsored by the farmers of Fukushima, mostly because they've done quite a bit to basically try to drum up tourism, but also people are just not buying the produce from Fukushima. I have no idea why. What this trip was, though, a lot of it was going to various places, seeing the area around Fukushima, doing normal touristy trips, staying at a really nice hotel again, but also we got to tour a couple of farms where they talked about the procedure in which they make sure that the radiation actually is not in the food.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And so they talk about how, for example, with the rice, there is a very specific nutrient that they're trying to get out of the soil, and so they basically look at the table of elements and they go in the same column, or not same column, same row. Because that way it would have the same number of electrons.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So that basically the plant would bond with that one instead of the radioactive element.
Oh, interesting.
And so what they do is they basically mix the soil up with that extra mineral in the soil. And so when the plant goes to absorb things from the soil, it will grab the non-radioactive element and leave the other one behind. And they do that, and they also mix in a couple of other nutrients to help so that basically the flavor doesn't get screwed up with mixing all this one mineral into the soil. And so they do all this stuff and talk about what they're mixing in, and then after they've produced all this rice, they actually will send all of the bags of rice through a scanner, basically a Geiger counter, a giant Geiger counter, to see if there's any radiation. And the farmer who basically owned like a large chunk of the land in the area said that he has been doing this for the past like 5 years or so, and ever since he started this procedure, he has not had a single bag of rice that has ever had any radiation in it. Nothing's ever failed the test, nothing's had any radiation in it. It's basically the same equivalence as if you had grown it in Tachikawa.
Nice.
We did that. We also went to a lovely little apple and pear farm. I bought a lot of apples there. So yes, there was a large period of time where my entire household was just filled with produce from Fukushima. And you know what? I'm still healthy.
Yep.
So it is very interesting, and it's almost the level of precautions that they take make me almost more confident in their produce than other places simply because they're going through so many precautions that I'm almost more confident in them. But the problem is, because of the stigma that comes with the radiation in the soil, people aren't buying produce from there. And so they're doing things like they are selling to like gyudon restaurants for a lot cheaper than they normally would. But those restaurants will buy it because it's proven to be healthy. It's proven to be like clean of radiation, and yet they can get a really good price on it because it's not being bought anywhere else. So your gyudon places, 7-Eleven has a contract with them. A lot of the rice in 7-Eleven bentos and onigiri tends to come from Fukushima.
Interesting.
Or was it Family Mart? I can't remember which one. Anyway, that sort of idea. So regardless of whether or not you realize it, there is Fukushima rice that you are probably eating.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not getting away from it here in Japan.
Yeah. But it was a meeting in which they basically just were there to talk about it to a bunch of foreigners and basically try to drum up interest and try to spread the news that, no, that produce is fine now. We've gone through these processes and we're doing this and this and this and this, and we're okay in Fukushima. Area that is more hit is probably going to be Sendai rather than Fukushima.
Interesting.
And I say that because that's actually where the air currents point the radiation towards.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, and that's where I kind of land.
Mm-hmm. All right, new thing. Let's talk about a new thing of the year. Something new that we've acquired, I guess, for this year.
Yes, please go first.
I think one of the things could be, this is not my pick, but it could be my iPhone 11. My iPhone 11 Pro is very nice. I do like it a lot. I like it better than my iPhone 7, and my iPhone 7 was an amazing phone. So I do like my iPhone 11, but I think my pick has to be my new car. Well, my car.
Oh, yeah.
My car is technically not new. It was a year old when we purchased it, but it is basically new. My wife and I have saved for a long time for a car. In Japan, you don't need one too much. You can very easily get away with one. And if you sit down and look at the finances involved, owning a car is probably not the best. You probably don't need one. Even when we didn't have a car, even with all of our strollers, we took the train all over the place, and with strollers, it still worked fine. Occasionally, we would just hail a taxi and pay for a taxi, and even with all the money you would have to spend on train travel and taxis, you still make out better than owning a car in Japan, I'm pretty sure. Especially when we were just married or when you're single, like there's no reason to own a car.
Yeah. For example, there is no reason for me to own a car.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can make it anywhere I want with the train system here.
With the train system, or even if you want to go someplace further away, paying for a taxi every once in a while, even though it's expensive, compared to train travel, it's expensive, but it would still be fine. The amount of exorbitant money you spend on a taxi would still be way less than the amount of money you would pay for a car and insurance and things like that. So, yeah. But with little girls and us taking trips every once in a while, we wanted to get a car. And we'd have actually been borrowing my in-laws' car for a while. So we've been saving for a long time. We'd been married 12 years by that time. So we've been saving for a long time. And I wanted to get something that was good. And we were in no rush to get a car, which is the best position to be in when you're buying a car. No rush whatsoever. So I'd been scouring the websites for probably a year by that point. And the same thing with our house, too. We were in no rush, and we waited for a while and finally found a real good one. I was thinking, too, I want to find a steal because we can wait for a steal. We're in no pressure. So when we finally get a steal, we'll go for that. And I've been looking for a very specific Honda Stepwagon type car. Actually, it started our search looking at the Toyota Esquires. Because one of the things, too, is since I was looking at slightly used vehicles, that I wanted to get a higher grade model. Because by the time they're used, the grade of the car is not really factored too much into the price. At least not as much as it is when you buy it brand new anyway. You buy a brand new high grade car, you're going to spend a lot of money. But when you're buying used, it doesn't seem to factor too much into the price of the car. So I was looking at high-end Toyota minivans and high-end Honda minivans. Mostly speaking, the Toyota Esquire and the Honda Stepwagon here in Japan. And there are other minivans that are even higher grade, but most of them are larger, and I didn't really want a large vehicle. I wanted a small vehicle because the roads around me are kind of tiny, so I didn't want a large vehicle. which definitely ruled out the Model X, which is disappointing. Of course, price ruled out the Model X a long time before the size did, but And I really did want an electric car, but we weren't getting that either because they just don't have enough electric cars in Japan. So I had to settle for a hybrid. So I was looking at the hybrid Esquires and the hybrid step wagons. What I ended up doing after a while was I would go first to the dealer because I learned after once or twice bringing her, my wife only wants to come when we're like basically about to sign the papers. And I don't want to sign the paper on the first visit because, again, I want to steal. So I want the price to come down. So if an interesting car that fit all the specs was in the market, I'd go to the dealer, I'd check it out. I'd put it in my, I had like a collection of favorites I kept. And if the price dropped, then I'd go again and bring my wife.
Mm-hmm.
So this happened to a car that was at a dealership at about an hour away, which was on the far end of my limit. But so I said, okay, great. I went, checked it out, looked good. It fit everything. So then I put it in my favorites. The price came down. So I said, okay, this is interesting. So I made an appointment through the website to come see it again. And we got a sitter for our kids. We went down. And when we got there, the guy said, oh, we sold it this morning.
Oh.
You can't look at it. We're like, what? Okay, we made an appointment with you. This is on your calendar. You know which car we're coming to look at. You couldn't have called us? I was so frustrated. I was very mad. And my wife was trying to calm me down. She was frustrated as well, but she could see that I was very frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
So she was trying to help calm me down, even though she was kind of frustrated as well. So then on the way back, there was another Honda dealership. And one of the questions we had was, is this guy really lying, or does he just not want to deal with me for whatever reason? Maybe it's because I'm a foreigner. He just doesn't want to sell it to me. So we pulled in to this other Honda dealership. And because I've been looking all over, there's only 2 or 3 cars ever in Tokyo region that fit the criteria that I have. So I was like, yeah, there's no other cars. So let's stop at this Honda dealership and ask them if there's a car that fits our criteria in the area. Oh, because the other thing too is I could see it's still available on the website. So I was like, how is this sold? It's still available on the website.
Mm.
So we pulled into that other Honda dealership. I said, oh yeah, this is the car we want. We want this, range of miles, this color, this grade, this everything. And they say, oh yeah, we've got one of those. And we're like, I was like, what? Wait a minute. No, you have one? Because, I know there's no others in the area. And for sure enough, they had one that fit all the criteria. And I was like, what? Wow, they have one. So we took a look at it, and it was, again, it wasn't the steal price. So I was disappointed in that. But we played them very well. We don't want to, we can't pay this. Look, here's this other one for sale over in that other place we went to. Because again, it was still on the website. So we went to the dealer and said, oh yeah, there's another one that has the exact same things and it's cheaper over there. Apparently that one was sold. We used that one as a way to help him get the price down. So yep, he brought the price down a bit, but still not as much as we wanted. So then we went home and we're like, yeah, well, it fit the criteria, but it's not, it's still not a steal. So we got to wait for it to be a steal. And we did leave saying, hey, if you could bring it down anymore, just give us a call tonight. And he called us in that evening and brought it down more. And then, of course, my wife wisely asked him to bring it down even further, and he did. So we got it for even cheaper than that. Yeah, we really wheeled and dealed. And I think the biggest thing for us was the lesson that God, I think, was trying to teach us on the way home because we were so frustrated. And of course, God says, oh, you think you're being cheated? Just wait. I have the plan for you. It's right here. Pull over and you'll see it. So I think that was the funniest thing for us is that why are we stressing? Why aren't we trusting? God has the plan for us. So anyway, that was our car. And it is a wonderful piece of machinery.
It's exactly what you wanted.
It's exactly what we wanted. And having the nice thing is really nice. Having a nice car with the high grade stuff, it's very nice. And wheeling and dealing to get it to as cheap as possible was very nice for us. But it worked out pretty well.
Mm. Yeah, I did not get a new car this year.
Good. Wise move, Ryan. Wise move.
What can I say? I really went out and didn't put forward that effort to spend more money. No, honestly, for me, I did not get too many new things this year. Most of my money this year has been going towards the fun thing for me has been new games. I have put most of my money towards that simply because truly the vast majority of my money goes towards my continued paying off of my student loans.
Good. Mm-hmm.
As you know, they should.
Your education was nice and valuable. Mm-hmm.
It was nice and valuable. It got me a job. And I will look forward to the day that that is gone, where I don't have to worry about continually sending money back to the States to pay off the loan.
So I'm in that state. Now I just have to continually send money back to America to pay for the things I buy on iTunes. Which luckily is not too much. But
well, see, I'd be okay with that because that would be a good limit on myself because I'm like, okay, all the money that's in my American bank account is just for my fun things, so I'm not allowed to put more than X amount in here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I would probably say that my new thing of the year would have to be my iPhone.
Okay.
I will say that. My new iPhone is probably my favorite new thing of the year. Mm-hmm. Everything else that I have is reasonably small, but that is my biggest splurge purchase that to this day is still being a little painful whenever I look at my bank account, but you know.
But it only happens every 3 years, right, Ryan?
It only happens every 3 years. Yeah, the only reason I say it like that is simply because I'm normally the type of person who I always have to have a really good buffer in my bank account, and I'm still recovering from this one. Mm-hmm. I say low, but it's not really that low. It's just me being obsessive. But yeah, I would say my iPhone is probably the pick of the year for that for me. Mm-hmm. And I can probably say that next year, given the timing of everything, it might be a PlayStation 5.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Because those are due out in the holiday season of 2020. So, you know, I'm already considering the need to save up for that.
Even in Japan it's coming out?
Sony is a Japanese company.
That's true. I forgot. Yeah.
So that'll come out before it ever makes it to America here. So I am looking forward to that.
Well, Ryan.
Oh, yes.
Are you thirsty?
I am thirsty. I am very parched. So parched, indeed, that I will pick up a peach and pear tea soda.
Peach and pear tea soda. So this is a Japanese company. I know them for making teas. They might be famous for other things. Well, I mean, this evening tea brand. Kirin is a Japanese company. They make all kinds of drinks. But the evening tea brand is mostly teas, right?
Especially for the evenings.
I guess so. But yeah, they make, they have a straight tea. Don't they have a Darjeeling?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, they have a bunch of tea drinks.
I will be completely fair and say I'm very much a coffee person. And so when it comes to tea, I tend to drink tea very few and far between. And when I do, it is usually lemon honey tea. Mm-mm. Because I'm starting to feel sick. I need to drink this.
Right. And there, actually, it says it in the kanji, but we're not translating that. But it's mostly British teas, I think. This brand is not Japanese teas. I think Kirin does make Japanese teas, but this brand is not Japanese teas.
Well, the logo has a woman in a fancy hat, so I assume that it's supposed to be British.
Yeah.
Because fancy hats.
My family mostly drinks Japanese teas, but sometimes my wife will want what they call the straight tea, which I think is just regular European tea.
Yeah, it's a red tea or a brown tea.
So I think sometimes my wife drinks that, and I know that I get this brand when she wants that. But most of the time, they're drinking mugi cha or sokenbi cha or those kinds of teas.
Yeah.
So apparently, this is a tea soda, and I'm not sure I've ever had a tea soda.
Yes. Peach and pear tea soda. I have no idea what that means.
No.
So I'm a little scared.
And I think my wife first noticed this because it had the Frozen 2 marketing on it, which we had just seen the movie, and my wife noticed this in the store, and she's like, peach and pear tea soda, Frozen 2. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
let's see what this is like, huh?
Let's see what this is like. Ooh, that's a good smell.
The smell was strong on the peach. Mm-hmm. And the taste is a bit strong on the peach.
Yeah.
I don't taste much tea.
I taste a peach soda.
Yeah, pretty much. With a hint of pear.
Very small hint.
Yes.
Actually, one of those things that I got from the Fukushima trip was I got a giant bottle of just pure peach juice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was really good. But yeah, this tastes like that, except a little bit more diluted and then soda added. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to this. I like it a lot more than what we had last time. Mm-hmm. The Ume Pepsi.
Yes, the sour Ume Pepsi.
You sound so thrilled about it. You're never letting me pick again.
You can pick again. This one does have 1% juice, and it is my nemesis at 450 milliliters in a 500 milliliter bottle.
Why do they do that?
I don't know.
I mean, they're not saving anything.
No. Am I reading this right? Does it say they're Spanish peaches on the front there?
Yeah, that says Spanish peaches.
Or at least, Spanish peach juice, at least, right?
Yeah.
Those last two, or the third and fourth, the last are juice, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to double check with my translating app, but that is how I am reading it.
So, since these have Frozen 2 marketing, I gave you the one with Kristoff, and I have the one with Sven.
Yep.
Do you think ours tastes different because you have Kristoff and I have Sven?
Yes, mine tastes less like reindeer.
Yeah, mine tastes like reindeer. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Mine tastes like human.
Mine is peach-flavored reindeer. That's got to be what it is. That's got to be why it's so good, I think.
Taste the reindeer.
Because reindeers taste better than people.
Have you tried Soylent Green?
No, I'm sorry. I was referring to the song. Reindeers are better than people.
Oh, I was referring to taste.
Yeah, the taste. Yeah, you're right. No, sorry. I was going to say reindeers taste better than people.
But the translating app said the exact same thing that we did, so I would assume that two humans and a computer all saying that that's a Spanish peach juice, we can officially say it's Spanish peach juice.
Which is interesting for a Japanese company to do Spanish peaches, because Japanese peaches are pretty tasty.
They are, but probably they could get them cheaper.
Yeah, I guess probably.
Or they have a bottling plant in Spain. It just would make no sense to have a bottling plant in Spain and then label it in Japanese and ship it to Japan then.
Yeah, I would think so. Anyway, very good. Peach and Pear Tea Soda. It is on the upper and up side of our choices.
Yes, I would say that it is significantly better than Ume Pepsi.
Better than Rich Honey CC Lemon?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think so too.
I would say it's even better than the Lime Coke, was it?
The Coke Clear Lime. Yeah, I think so. I think so too.
So, I think that makes it at least second place. Yeah, Coke Apple is still first place.
Yeah, I think so too.
When we're picking our favorite things of the year, we clearly skipped over one subject area that we did not talk about. And that would be books. I will speak for myself, but I read a lot of books that did not come out this year. Unfortunately, my books are like my games. I have a backlog, and I tend to read books that are a year or 2 or 20 years old.
Yeah.
So pretty much most of the books that I read this year did not come out this year.
I'm not even sure I read too many other books this year. No, I think I might have read 2 or 3, but they were older.
I think my last count was I did not do well this year. I think I got to about 10 books this year.
I might have gotten to 5. That might be high.
I got to about 10 books this year, but I tend to do most of my reading either during winter break or summer break. And so probably I'm going to get through another 3 to 5 before the end of the year. Well, we skipped over our favorite books of the year. I had a couple of books that I read this year, but again, a lot of them are older. But we did have one book that we read this year that came out this year. And we both read this book. And that book was The Bayern Agenda.
By Dan Moren.
For those of you who haven't read The Bayern Agenda,
please read it now.
Please read it now, and for those of you who also have not read The Caledonian Gambit, you might want to read that one first.
Yes, I agree. I do want to talk about that.
But Bayern Agenda, if you haven't read it, read it now, come back. If you have read it, stick around. And also, if you haven't read Caledonian Gambit, please read that one as well.
Yeah, let's start there, actually. Listening to Dan Moren talk, I think he said this in one of the podcasts, because he has switched publishers, this had to be a book 1, because his new publisher doesn't want to advertise a book from another publisher and say, read that first and then come back, because I'm sure they feel like they'll lose people.
Of course. I mean, it's not every day that an author gets a chance to write the first book of a series.
Yes, exactly. So I think he jumped at the choice to have another publisher. And I think he did explain pretty well all the necessary parts in Caledonian Gambit.
I would say, yes, he definitely explained everything that you need to know, so you don't have to jump in with Caledonian Gambit.
Right. If you have read Caledonian Gambit, you do get a better feel of the whole world or the universe in general.
Yeah, I would agree. It's the same way with a game that I told you about a couple of weeks ago. There's a Legend of Heroes series. And actually that series has several other series that take place in the same timeline and around the same time. And you will understand the game better if you've played the other series. But I feel like it is in the same ballpark of, yeah, you'll understand it better, but you will still be able to get a lot out of it if you haven't. And I think that's the same way with the Bayern Agenda.
So yeah, I think one of the biggest things that they mention it, but they don't really go into depth about it, is the whole incident at Sabia, which is basically the beginning half of the Caledonian Gambit, is learning about why Brody was on Sabia in the first place and why he left the Illyricum fleet to join the Commonwealth.
Yeah, basically the setup of why he would be viewed as a traitor, which really is a big part of his motivations and his concerns throughout the rest of the book. Because pretty much if anybody from the Empire knew who he was or figured out who he really was, he would be in a whole lot of trouble.
And that happened, yeah.
Yeah, that happened, but I mean, that was his motivator for a lot of it, was, I can't let people know who I am.
Right, and he was very pleased when he had found out that they had changed his identity. But then, of course, somebody in the book realizes who he is, and that adds just that much more tension, right? Because it is explained here, but of course, I knew it from reading the Caledonian Gambit, but it is explained here that, nobody can find out, and then all of a sudden somebody recognizes him, and it adds a whole great amount of tension to the book and makes it much more exciting.
Exactly. So, I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, so I'm going to say it right now. As a whole, I really liked this book.
Yep, I really liked it too. This one, along with Caledonian Gambit, but I think more so than Caledonian Gambit, it kept me on the edge of my seat more.
I think for me, I liked the Bayern Agenda more than Caledonian Gambit, but I felt the Caledonian Gambit was a great setup, and so it brought me into the world, and it brought me into the situation a whole lot better. It also gave me a whole lot more tools that they had access to use it for this book. For example, the spacecraft that is the MacGuffin of the Caledonian Gambit is used in this story. I mean, they wouldn't be able to do half the things that happen in the story if they didn't have the MacGuffin.
Yep. I think one of the interesting things about this book, too, is, again, the characters. They take the characters a lot further while introducing new characters that add to the story and don't detract from it.
Yeah.
Like Kovalik's wife. She does a lot in the story. She's very involved, and she plays a huge role and makes the story more interesting. In fact, takes Kovalik out of the story in some ways.
The new characters did not take away. I honestly would say that the characterization that he adds in this story gives a depth to the characters that was more visible than in the Caledonian Gambit.
Yep.
Whereas in the first book, it did feel like the one complaint that I heard from somebody online about that first book was a lot of the characters sounded the same, like at least in the way that they talked to each other.
Okay.
And I didn't feel that way, but
No.
I felt like it was even more distinct in this book.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I think there were more varied characters in this book.
Exactly, and I think that was the key. And I think that's where that guy's complaint may have come from. And I think it also comes down to the fact that there were more varied characters in this story, and he expresses the characters in a more varied and distinct way that I just think it came off a whole lot better in this book, too.
Yeah, I mean, in the first book, they talk the same, and they're similar because they spent 20 years being spies together.
Yeah.
Maybe not that long, but it's a tight team, so they're going to know what they're saying. They're going to make the same jokes.
It's the idea of, like, when you're sitting in an office with somebody, you can start a sentence and the other person understands where you're going because you've probably said it before or something similar before.
So I guess maybe it's a flaw in the story, but I don't know. I thought it was fine because those guys were working together toward a common goal and getting it done. So,
see, for me, it felt like because it was like that, while that was a complaint that somebody else had, for me, it felt like they were more believable that they had that relationship.
Yeah.
Because, frankly, you don't always get to see where do the inside jokes come from. No, they've always had those inside jokes.
Right. So even at the beginning of this Bayern Agenda, they have to get this defector right out. And these guys are all working together. And if they can't talk together and work together that well, then how would they ever get out of that building?
Exactly.
But these guys work together and know each other, thinking that they can just do it. So if they don't have that kind of camaraderie, it's unbelievable to expect them to get out of that kind of situation.
I will also say that I generally really like this style of story.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, I love sci-fi, but it's also that mix of sci-fi and like spy thriller.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I just really like that. And so that's why I'm just saying that I can't fault him on any of that, because I really like this style of story.
No, and I think I wanted to bring this up too, because I really did like how we were introduced to the information. We were introduced to the information as the characters were learning about it. And often we would hear about it from one character and then switch to the other part of the story and realize that those characters don't know that bit of information yet. And listening to them flounder, it was quite suspenseful and quite fun, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Again, actually, one of the nice things about this book too is that it shed more light on some characters, especially the general.
Mm-hmm.
Learning more of his backstory is quite interesting.
Yeah, because you get introduced to the general pretty early, but you have no idea what's going on and where he came from and what his motivation is or why he does the things that he does.
Mm-hmm. And it is interesting that, this story cements his chain of command too, in that he's not really responsible to too many people.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's kind of it's not the central conflict of the book, but it is a very interesting side story that's happening at the end, where it's like, wait a minute, who are we supposed to give this guy this much power?
But again, that's what you said. That's what draws the conflict at the end.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Page. He's sent away for most of the book. He was pretty good in Caledonian Gambit.
Yeah.
And he's not much in this one at all.
He's in at the beginning, and then you see him at the end, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But he is a very interesting character because the little bits and pieces that you get of him kind of gives you the idea of basically the hacker friend who tends to like sit at the home base and like help you from afar.
Mm-hmm. Or at least the guy in the field that can get it done for you right away.
Yes.
He's not the leader, but he's the doer.
Exactly. And he's very interesting because you don't find out a whole lot about him. He is one who does these things. Like, oh yeah, just give me a couple of minutes and I'll reroute this and then it'll be done. Okay, great. You realize that he's a very capable member of the team. But you don't know very much about who he is outside of that. At least I didn't see that.
No, I didn't see that either. So then he decides somewhere toward the beginning of the story, well, maybe in between stories, right?
Probably between the stories or maybe a long time ago, and it's just now that he's acting on it.
Or it's come to light now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's been passing information about the general to the other intelligence division, since the general is kind of on his own.
Basically, he's concerned that the general is not having enough checks on him.
Right. Too much free agency. So...
Which, given current political situations, you can understand why checks and balances are important.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So Paige does pass along that information, and throughout the story, near the end, they finally realize that it's been Paige the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what's really interesting is not only that, but also the scene where you get a look at his apartment, basically.
Yes. I think that scene is very good. I think it was almost necessary because I think if they didn't have it, I think it would have been a more hollow death.
Yeah.
So I think I'm very glad that they had that. It gave more meaning to it.
It gave a lot of meaning to it, and it also fully humanized him, because before that you realized, okay, he's the guy who's always involved and always doing these things and always doing this, but you didn't know who he was. But that apartment scene made you go, this is who Paige was. And it also gave a little bit more depth to his relationship with Kovalik.
Mm-hmm. So I guess my question is, should Kovalik have killed him. Why couldn't they have just transferred him to the CID, to that intelligence division instead? Look, if he's not going to get along, or is he just going to make more trouble in CID? So they had... Is Kovalik so bought into the general's worldviews that he has to kill him?
That's a good question, because for me, I would say you have to think about, yes, it could be that, but also, I mean, he's shown himself to basically betray the team. And at that point, I know he can't work with them anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the fact that he knew something else, or he knew too much of something else.
Yeah. Because even if he was moved away, he would still cause issues.
Yes. Right? And I think in Kovalik's mind, he's basically doing this for the good of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
He is taking Paige out of the equation simply because it would cause too much trouble for the long run of keeping everyone alive.
Yeah, and I guess that actually is one of my questions. The general's main philosophy, his main worldview that Kovalik is fighting for, is for the greater good of everyone, not necessarily just the Commonwealth.
No, it is for the good of everyone.
Right. So he might do things that are not necessarily good. He hasn't yet, I guess.
Yeah.
He might not necessarily do something that is good for just Commonwealth. He's mainly acting on behalf of everyone. And he's finding that at least the Commonwealth is open to that, where the Illyrican Empire wasn't, I guess.
Well, I mean, you also think about the fact that, like, if you don't have that kind of mentality where it's the good for everyone, then you end up alienating the other side fully. And then there's no hope of doing the good for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of the thing, is if you don't keep that in mind constantly, you will destroy any possibility of peace, because it's basically in the attempts to keep a Cold War cold.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of it, is he wants to make sure that the Cold War does not go hot.
Right. Yes, I do get that feeling too.
Because the moment it goes hot, everything gets destroyed again.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole idea behind all of the fears behind our world's Cold War, was we just didn't want it to go hot, and we would try everything to prevent that, many times skirting the edge bit, though.
Yes, exactly. Getting very close. There was no real theme, I think, to this book.
I would maybe trust and loyalty.
Trust and loyalty, and an underlying theme that the prince's actions, the evil actions aren't going to get you anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be a side theme.
That tends to be in most good versus evil.
Yeah, exactly.
In most protagonist versus antagonist stories, is they always want to make sure that the bad guy gets his comeuppance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, I would say trust and loyalty tends to be the big thing that comes out at me. But, I mean, that tends to be a big issue in a lot of spy thrillers.
Oh, I had a question for you, too. Did they even discuss with Eric that he was going to defect?
Oh, no.
I think he was forced into it pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Because it was either defect or get blamed, I guess. Those were your options.
Mm-hmm. It was kind of you have two choices here. You die, or you appear to defect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I am looking forward to seeing the next book, which is apparently coming in May 2020.
Oh, okay. So we'll have to read it in 2020, huh?
We'll see about it. Can't guarantee it, because my backlog of books might be up to 2010 at that point. I will say that as a whole, I really enjoyed this book. I really think that Dan Moren wrote his characters very well. I also just generally like his writing style, because that snark, that sarcasm that is in a lot of the characters, I just generally really like reading something like that. That is something that I genuinely really enjoy.
I do too. And actually, one of the points in the book, he is making snark about something, and then he interrupts himself. And I loved that. I was like, he knows his snark is too much. He interrupts himself and moves on. Oh, it was great. I enjoyed it. It was pretty funny.
I found it excellent, and I was very happy that I'm really happy to read books by him, because he is one of the few authors who has that kind of style in modern day writing. As a whole, I think it was very well written, and I'm a big fan of this, and I am looking forward to seeing where he takes this story next.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad there's more stories coming.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. Oh, you okay? What was that?
I'm fine. That was a knife falling off the edge of my counter into my sink. Welcome to My Hill to Die On, episode 9.
Everything has things there.
Do you want to start over? He did not make My Brain Is Dead Now. He made Your Name. Mm-hmm. Ryan's Endgame.